Well, I'm glad you're here because we've been working together a little bit,
We have been.
and I am kind of peripherally engaged in the message of what you're doing now a little bit. But I think it's so cool. Can you, like, I don't know, explain the picture a little bit to me, what you got going on?
Yeah, so I'm in the second year, or I'm rounding the third year of my current position, and I think I'm still trying to figure out what I do and the short of it. I work for UT Extension, which is not something that everyone just intuitively knows about. I mean, University of Tennessee, pretty easy to understand, professors, students, things like that. But Extension is the part of the University of Tennessee that goes out into the community. And I have a PhD. I teach a college class as an adjunct. But what I do full time is what's called a specialist in Extension. And so I direct 2 nutrition programs. It's federal funds that run through UT. It's about $6 million in funds, and we do nutrition education programming for low-income families. And it's through the Extension system, so that operates through 95 county offices where we have agents and program assistants who really do that on-the-ground work. So I'm up at what's called the state level, managing the resources and leading the people at the state team to carry out that work.
At the community level.
Yeah.
In all 95 counties.
Correct.
In the state of Tennessee.
Yes.
And it's all low income kind of stuff, SNAP benefits, food stamps, kind of that crowd.
Yeah, so the funding comes as part of the Farm Bill.
So it's Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, so it's USDA at the top, and then I have 2 funding streams, one through NIFA
What's
or
that?
FNS. I shouldn't have said it because now you asked me about it.
What's FNS?
Food Nutrition Service,
Okay.
and then NIFA is something like that. Now I can't share this with work. I came from outside Extension. A lot of people are in Extension for 30 years or something like that, but I came into a director role from outside, not really knowing anything about Extension. And so these 2 funding streams specifically target low-income families. It's funded, at least SNAP Ed is funded through the Farm Bill. So, people understand SNAP as food stamps. And so people get those, families get food stamps to help them make ends meet, to supplement their food budget. And part of that funding goes through, at least in Tennessee, through the land grant to provide education, so nutrition education for families. Now, people only have to be eligible for SNAP for our programs. They don't have to actually be on food stamps. So we operate differently. We're not, run through DHS. We don't go through an income form or anything like that. We find people in schools, in senior centers, in in different community agencies. There's a lot of recovery places, maybe some halfway houses, things like that, where we find people who are eligible, and then we provide them with really, really great, high-quality nutrition research and curricula from the university.
What kind of education are you trying to impart on these folks?
Yeah, so I think that question's really great because it speaks to a tension between eating in the most healthy way, and that might be different than the way you and I think about it, and then eating in a way that and managing your food budget in a way that feeds your family well. And so it's not about buy all organic or free range, things like that. It's not even about making every choice the healthiest choice. It's you need whole grains, and this is how you read a label to know that whole grains are actually a part of this bread. It's not just the honey wheat or something. There's actual whole grains, and that's something I learned. I mean, I have a PhD, and I did not know that about I don't remember. You and I went to high school together. I don't remember taking a nutrition class.
I don't either.
They didn't tell me that.
Yeah, so there's this baseline of something that we do every single day.
Yeah.
That we don't really know everything about. And so you guys are filling in the gaps a little bit.
Yeah.
And it just happens to be with low income, but it could be with anybody.
Yeah.
If a doctor, if somebody with a doctorate is learning these things,
Yeah.
then that means that there's a huge need out there that people haven't learned.
Absolutely. And we have a mechanism for that. So we're in the Family Consumer Sciences Department. There are FCS agents, and they're doing nutrition programming for anyone in the community. Our grant just specifically targets low-income families because they tend to have a harder time, stretching their food dollars. So a lot of it is also about food safety.
Like don't wash your chicken in the sink.
Don't wash your chicken. Yeah.
Why is that bad?
So
Cross-contamination?
yeah, so when the water hits it,
Yeah.
it's gonna, splatter. And not everything that splatters will be just water. It will be the thing off of the chicken.
Yeah.
and that might be nothing.
Yeah.
But it also could be, some food poisoning.
Right.
Like a little tummy ache. So,
Yeah.
And you don't want that.
No.
So you don't have to wash your chicken. But a lot of people do that. And that's not a low income thing.
That's an everybody thing.
It's an everybody thing. I told my therapist that. She was like, wait, what? I'm not supposed to wash. My grandma told me to wash my chicken. I'm like, no, you don't have to do that.
I worked at a restaurant growing up, and we washed every single chicken that we took out of the. Yeah, and no idea.
So yeah, we have some professors, some faculty that would take issue with that. You don't wash the chicken. You don't have to do that. You're cooking it. You're gonna cook away the yucky stuff. So
right, there's more of a danger in splattering it all over your knife.
Yeah.
Well, is it working? Like, what kind of results do you see from your work?
So we have a whole evaluation team, which is great. So we have luckily we're well funded. I came from a really underfunded place. I was 10 years in refugee resettlement, and the idea was it was a, private public partnership, and they purposely underfunded you, and it was really tough. You had to just beg for stuff. But here we have some capacity, and we have an evaluation team, and we do pre and post tests. We measure if people are eating more fruits and vegetables, if they are, understanding like the food safety things that we talk about. We also measure if they're saving money. Mm-hmm. So we do a lot of tips about how to shop in season, fresh, canned, frozen, all equally nutritious. So buy the thing that makes the most sense economically, plan ahead. I don't know about you, but I usually end up with like 5 of the same loaf of bread because I forgot that I just bought it the week before. And so I've got it in the freezer, but, we end up buying doubles when we don't plan. And so it's little tips like that. And, they might save 30 or 40 bucks a month, but when your food budget's about $250, that's a big deal.
For a whole household?
For a whole household.
Yeah.
And we have families that say, my kids weren't eating every meal. We weren't eating every meal the last week of the month. But now, after these classes, we figured it out. We can stretch it out, and my kids aren't hungry anymore. That's a big deal. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So what are some, I know you've been doing it a short while. You said 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
What's like the biggest success you've felt, or like the most gratifying part of what you've done so far? Has there been a story of a family or something like that that's really just like, man, I'm really doing good?
Yeah, I think it's so hard because I have this belief in the impact of what I do. I think it's this like crazy idea. This one person can do something good, and I live my life that way. But I really believe that like a lot of people working together can make a big impact. And so we talk about, in trainings, we'll say like, what was the success you had in the county? Like, what was one person that was changed? And people will talk. And, we had a guy say, I went through your classes and I put into practice what you said. And we're not saying anything wild, like restrict, all these types of foods or any kind of fad diet, anything like that. We're just saying basically the dietary guidelines. We use what the federal government says in those. And he said, I lost 40 pounds. My A1C levels are normal. I think you saved my life.
Really?
And we got that letter, and it was like, oh, wow. Because I came in, honestly, as a skeptic of nutrition education.
Really?
Like, you can tell people all day long that fruits and vegetables are good for them, but if it's easier to get the Pop-Tart or if it's more yummy, and it is, then they're going to do that. Like, what is education going to do? And I come from a systems perspective. That's what the research I do. I see all these barriers to eating well. I know an apple's good for me. I can't find it at this corner store. Like, it doesn't matter. So I see all those barriers. So I came in as a skeptic, but it's true. I mean, sometimes people just need a few tips, a little bit of encouragement. But we do know that education isn't enough. And so we do tackle those kind of systems level things and policy level things. And we try to look at, we're doing this thing called Shop Smart Tennessee in corner stores. And we're working with store owners to make more fresh produce available or low fat dairy, more water. I walked into a store one time in West Tennessee and I thought, I'm going to try to get lunch. And I couldn't find anything that met like the healthy,
that met the what the federal government that you work from
Yeah,
that
I
met
kinda,
those guidelines.
yeah, it was.
And it's probably the only store within miles and miles when you're in a rural area.
Exactly. It was the only store, and there was a lot of high sugar drinks. There was a lot of chip type products, the spicy ones and
The good stuff.
the good
The
stuff.
stuff that people are going to
Even-
buy because it's yummy.
Yeah, even in the water case, it was all soda.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't find water. I found one low fat cottage cheese, which isn't enough for lunch. And it didn't taste good. I bought it, and then it was yucky. And it just didn't, it was not yummy. So I was just hungry.
It had been there forever. Nobody
Been there a
bought
while. The frozen vegetable section empty, and I was like, I just don't believe this got sold out. I just
Has it made changes in you? Like, has the education that you have gained from your vocation, from your job,
Yeah.
has it helped you nutritionally?
Yeah, for sure. I think so. I think it's helped me in thinking about parenting and getting kids to eat healthy food. And my degree's in child and family studies, and so I look at things from like a development or family systems perspective. And kids really do well when they get to try something, when they get to participate. And so we have community gardens and things like that. We have a curriculum that promotes a garden in a school. And so when kids plant things, they're way more likely, when they watch it grow, they're way more likely to try it. And they're also trying things in our classes that they wouldn't necessarily try at home, not because their parents don't think it's a good idea, but because it takes on average a child 10 times of trying something to decide really if they like it or not. And if you're throwing away broccoli 10 times, that's a lot of money for someone on a limited food budget.
Right.
So we try to meet that need too.
So you try to engineer other ways to make it to where you don't have to throw it away 10 times.
Exactly.
So you engage them in the process of growing it.
Yeah.
You educate them about what it is to where they're more willing to uptake.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we do like maybe a simple recipe. We send it home and they're like, hey, Mom, I actually really like carrots and apples together with some cinnamon. And then they're eating carrots and apples,
Yeah.
It's great.
Working with you, I keep hearing this term that I had never heard before. And I wonder like what it means, and that's food insecurity.
Mm-hmm.
So that seems like a big systemic issue, a plight for many, many families across every state probably. But what does that term really mean, where the rubber meets the road? What does that mean?
Yeah. So in kind of the nutrition world, we're going towards nutrition insecurity because a lot of people have access to food, but they might not have access to the most nutritious food. So we say food insecurity and nutrition insecurity, and it kind of means the same thing. But we're really trying to get at, do you have access to food that is healthful? And a lot of people don't. And you and I went to school together. We grew up in about the same area. I've never been more than 2 minutes away from arugula or, a huge produce section.
So it really is about access.
It's about access and what kind of food. And so you'll hear the term food desert, and it means like there's not, a grocery store within so many miles. And then you'll hear food swamp, which means there's a ton of food, but it's not great. It's fast food. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to call anybody out, but I've heard that like Dollar General, for instance, you find a lot of Dollar Generals in low income areas, and that might be like the closest grocery store, air quotes, that anybody has for 50 miles. And I don't know. I mean, I've been in in Dollar Generals before, and I'm not really. I don't think of them as like a bastion of healthful foods. So it seems like that is kind of, I don't know. That sounds like a food desert to me, right? And that is a little more ubiquitous than I think we see here in our populated, metropolis of,
Yeah.
of Knoxville. But you don't have to go very far to the closest thing you've got is a Dollar General, and low-fat cottage cheese that's been in the fridge for
Long time.
9 months is the best you can do. But like, where are some of those areas that you've visited, and what are like some of the ones that you've gone into that have surprised you, I guess? And do you feel like you've been able to kind of make a difference in any of those areas?
Yeah. I think that I always talk about Benton County as being pretty mind-blowing to me.
Benton County?
Benton County.
Where is
It's
it?
in West Tennessee. It's past Nashville. It's past Dixon County, which is kind of a commuter sleeper city for Nashville. And then there's Benton County. And there's a lot of rural places in Tennessee that have a lot of agriculture. And so they have access, through farms, farmers markets,
Right.
things like that. Benton County doesn't really have agriculture. It definitely is. I think it used to be one of the like 94th or like bottom 5
distressed county.
counties. But yeah, one of those. And I went in and I was talking to our program assistant, which is what the term we have for our educators. And I said, tell me about your county. And she's like, most people don't have cars, but most people have about a 10 to 20 minute drive if they find a ride to a grocery store.
Wow.
Or to the Walmart or something that has, everything. And we don't have a doctor. We have a doctor that comes in maybe once a week. We have urgent care with some nurse practitioners. I said, what do you do if your kid gets sick? She says, I either drive an hour to Jackson.
If you can find a car.
Or I wait. Yeah, or I wait. And I was like, so it's so much more than food.
Right.
And I'm not, and I really want to make sure not to just have this like deficit lens. Like there's a lot of problems, but families in these places are so resilient. There's some language in my world, and they call them low resource families. And I take a big issue with that, and I don't use it. I refuse to use it because these families have a lot of resources. They have a lot of mental resources. They have a lot of family resources. They have a lot of community resources.
They don't have money.
They don't have money.
Yeah.
They just don't have a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the kid gloves way to say they don't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
Is low resource.
Yeah, low financial resources.
Right.
But they have a lot of resources to draw on, and that's why I feel hopeful about this work, because they're bright and they know, and they know how they. I mean, I've been doing this work. I'm a nutrition education program director or whatever, but I do it because I have this passion for helping people and for doing what I do well, which tends to be in the financial management and tends to be in the strategic planning and things like that, to execute a program like this. But I can't cook, Ben. People don't let me do it.
Well, they need a fire in the kitchen.
Yeah, I'm not. Yeah.
Does that help you or not? Does that bring you to people's level, or does that, I guess, help you better be able to identify?
Yeah, I can empathize completely. I can't empathize with living in a hotel. I can't empathize with being transient, or I can't empathize with a lot of the things. But I have very few skills in the kitchen. My mom always said, I didn't teach you how to do that because then I know you'd end up doing it. It was this feminist thing that
Is
she
your mom
did.
a feminist?
Yeah, I'm
Awesome.
not sure she would say it. My dad would. My
Yeah.
dad would say he's a feminist.
Yeah.
My mom, my mom is one.
Yeah.
But I think it was that. She's like, then I knew you would end up doing it.
Yeah.
Instead, here I am.
Well, so your work has always been to serve, it sounds like.
Yeah.
And I knew you growing up, but we had a gap and being connected for 10 or 15 years. And
We're not that old.
Are we not?
We are. Just want to pretend.
But I mean, you were helping people for 10 years before you got your doctorate and started down this road, right? I mean, you were working to serve the underserved
Yeah.
before this.
Yeah.
What was that?
I was the executive director of Bridge Refugee Services for 5 years, but I was in resettlement for longer than that.
Refugee resettlement?
Refugee Resettlement.
Which means some bad shit's going on in somebody's country
Yeah.
and they need to go somewhere else. They can come to the States or other places, and you're helping them get acclimated.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's part of the United Nations Health Commission for Refugees program. The United States is a participant in that. And, when I was the director, we resettled annually, nationally, about 70,000 people a year.
To the States?
To the United States. And we were the biggest participant in the resettlement program. And that's exactly what it means. Something happened in your country for reasons over which you have no control. And you're a member of a certain political, national, ethnic group, social group, and you have to flee. And you cross a border most of the time. You cross a border into a second country, and then the UN decides if you should be repatriated, if you should stay in this country, or if you should be resettled. And so different populations had different terms in refugee camps. The Burundians that we resettled in Knoxville were...
The what?
Burundians.
From
Burundi.
Where's that?
It's sub-Saharan Africa. It's close to Tanzania.
Okay.
Kenya. And they were in Tanzania for 20, 30 years. I
In
resettled.
camps?
Yeah, in camps. I resettled a family, a mom who had 5 kids, and she was born in a refugee camp. Her mother was the one that fled.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
So that's a generational plight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Iraqi families that came through had been in Turkey or Jordan or Syria for a couple of years. And there's a lot of political reasons people get here faster or not.
Right.
And it's a very small fraction of the total refugee population in the world. But Knoxville, who knew, and I didn't know this growing up, has been resettling refugees since the mid-'80s.
Why?
So I think at first it was in response to the conflict in Vietnam and having Vietnamese refugees coming in and churches co-sponsoring them. And resettlement's been going on longer, but we in Knoxville, some church groups got together. They decided to co-sponsor families. And over time, it became more formalized, federally funded, and then became more of a ecumenical or secular thing. And that's, when I was doing it from 2008 to 2015.
Gotcha. So, let's take Vietnam, for instance. You laid out a couple of different options. Repatriated. Mm-hmm. What were some of the other ones? Repatriated means they go back to their country? And
and that's usually not
what happens.
Not what... I mean, I think eventually sometimes that happens, but...
Yeah. And then what are the other options for them?
They stay in the second country, so they figure out a way...
Okay, so they stay wherever they were a refugee. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or...
Resettled.
Yeah, they apply for resettlement.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like it's pretty important right now with... I mean, we're about to deal with a lot of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
From Afghanistan.
Yeah, and the refugee process usually is very slow. It takes a lot of years. You have to do these medical clearances and security clearances and things like that. That was one of the kind of talking points about resettlement. Like, it would be a very difficult, and if you meant harm to this country, it's like a bad way to go. Like, it's...
What do you mean?
It's like it's super bureaucratic. There's a lot of checks and balances. Like,
right. If you like, let's say in today's lens, if you were a bad actor coming over from Afghanistan, you would have a really, really hard time to make it resettling in our country.
Yeah, and you're going to have to wait a long time.
Yeah, and that red tape and that bureaucracy is there for that reason, right? But that ultimately, a byproduct of that is that it becomes very, very difficult for somebody who needs it to get it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think Knoxville is a really great place for refugees because there's a lot of faith groups in Knoxville that believe in welcoming the stranger. It is a moral mandate to help people no matter where they come from, and that inspired a lot of help. And then and for me, it was just the right thing to do. It doesn't matter. where you're from. If you need help, you need help. And
Sure.
the United States has a lot to give.
Mm-hmm. So, are you familiar with like the Somali population in Minnesota? Like I remember when I was living in LA, I became friends, but for some reason with a bunch of Minnesotans. And I went and visited a home with one of them one time, and they were talking about the Somalis, the Somalis, the Somalis, and I was like, "What?" I mean, like I've heard of Somalia, but I don't understand, like why you have this huge population of them here, and it's like almost every non-white person I saw in Minnesota was a Somali refugee.
Yeah.
And I did some digging, and it was the same thing. It was like, there's a civil war. They needed refuge. They needed a place to go. And for some reason, the state of Minnesota was a good place for a lot of them to land.
Yeah.
So I wonder, does stuff like that happen to state law? Like, does each state, I don't mean to use like sanctuary city or whatever, but do states have different mandates for who they'll let in and who they won't? And so you see these pockets of refugee populations come in different places and set down roots.
Yeah, some states operate kind of in a different way. And so you do see differences among the states. Like Tennessee pulled out of the Refugee Resettlement Program while I was there. So it just meant our money flowed pretty directly to us. It was federal. But
It didn't go through the state then? Is that what that means?
No, yeah, it didn't. It bypassed the state.
Okay.
And so it went through a third party, and it went through Catholic Charities in Tennessee.
Okay.
But every year I had to write a proposal and say who we could accept in Knoxville. And I would write that proposal based on our linguistic capacity, our housing capacity, our education capacity. So it might have so happened that in Minnesota they had a ton of people that could speak Arabic or Amharic or whatever, they were speaking.
Right.
And then could translate well, and they had the health resources available. And so we have Somalis in Tennessee.
Do we?
There's a documentary. I don't know if you've heard of it. Welcome to Shelbyville.
Oh, really?
Which is Bedford County. So they originally resettled in Nashville.
Somalis did?
Mm-hmm. And then they moved to where work was, which was in Bedford County in Shelbyville. And it caused kind of a ruckus.
I bet.
There was a lot of cultural mismatch and conflict between the people there, and the documentary is kind of this hopeful thing, like they kind of figured it out.
Yeah.
But the truth is that after that there were some vocal people, and there was a representative from that district that advocated for anti-refugee legislation in Tennessee, which was pretty devastating.
What was the name of the county?
Bedford County.
Who was that named after?
Oh yeah.
Right? Was it named after like
I don't know,
Nathan
but
Bedford Forrest, like the Klansman?
Possibly.
I bet it was.
Yikes.
It probably was.
Yeah.
I mean, so I can't imagine that it was a place that welcomed a bunch of non-white people with open arms.
Yeah. It's a big thing. And this has been a huge part of my personal learning. And to the population point, like we had Burmese coming to Knoxville because we had interpreters, but we had Chin Burmese. We didn't have Karenni. So the Karenni Burmese are in Nashville. We didn't have Bhutanese, which was the largest population coming to the U.S., but we didn't have any in Knoxville because I didn't have anybody that could translate or interpret. So that was really how that happened. But yeah, these racial tensions, the country of origin,
there's xenophobia. I mean, especially the more rural you get, that's when it becomes really crazy when you see somebody who doesn't look like you or act like you.
Yeah.
I listened to this. I think it was This American Life or something, and they opened these chicken processing plants in Alabama somewhere. And this city was like 95% white the entire time. And then the Hispanic population started moving in because this chicken processing plant employed almost 1,000 people. And you got to watch this like Hispanic culture very painfully meld with rural white America. And it wasn't easy, and it was painful from what I heard. And it was a shock for these people who felt like who felt like their God-given right was being encroached on.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine that it's an uphill battle every time you try to resettle a population that doesn't look like you. And it's got to be even harder in these areas that, I mean, I don't know, these areas that are so white and so in a lot of cases, I don't know, I don't want to say uneducated, but that kind of ends up being part of it. They've not seen,
Yeah.
they've not been outside of their town or their county. And that seems like some of the hardest, like that would be some of the hardest places to resettle some people. It seems like you would have an easier time in more populated areas where there's more tolerance already, with a foothold. Did you find that to be true?
Yeah. So we really only resettled within 100 miles, or was it 100 miles? I don't remember what the rules
Of
are
here?
now. Yeah, the 50-mile radius. But we really stayed in the Knoxville Metro and in Hamilton County in Chattanooga. So I had 2 offices. And I really felt like, refugee resettlement was life-saving work. Like, even if it was tough here, and it is tough here. It is tough here to be from another country. It is tough to not have your degrees transfer. It is tough to not have access to health care. It's tough to be in this country, but I always felt like at least it was better. I hope it's better.
Than living in a tent.
Then yeah, it's super. And the families that made it are super resilient. They have been through so much. We didn't ask their stories, but we would hear them. But we had a lot of stuff happen. I had an Iraqi man who's the victim of a hate crime off 17th.
Really?
Yeah, and beaten up in an elevator. And I had middle school, my 7th grader, a 7th grade boy from Iraq. One of my first clients came home upset, obviously, and this was during the Iraq War, and then after 9/11. Of course, the 2 things are separate; they're different,
right.
But this, with the middle school minds that were there, were saying, "Go back. Are you a terrorist? Do you have a bomb? These things." So this 7th grader, who was a victim of Al Qaeda,
right? He obviously didn't belong there either, or he wouldn't be here.
His father was killed for helping the U.S.
Right.
His mother was targeted because she worked for an American company.
And then he's got to come to the States where he's labeled as a terrorist.
Yeah.
Because of where he's from.
Yeah, because he's speaking Arabic. And I walked through the grocery store with his mom, who had highlights. She did not wear a hijab. She was an engineer by a trade, by education. She was Western educated. She spoke English fluently. And people would say, I think this was in North Knoxville, "Where are you from?" And she would say Turkey or something. Yeah. And I was like, "What? Why'd you say that?" And she's like, "I'm not telling them I'm from Iraq. Yeah. I'm not telling them that."
They shouldn't ask her that.
No,
to begin with.
It's a way to other. And I teach that in my diversity class. I mean, those seemingly innocent questions are a way to other.
I had a friend of mine, Kent Takano, on the podcast, and he's Japanese-born American. But like, he deals with it. English is his first language. He grew up in San Francisco, and he's sitting at a bar somewhere, and somebody's like, "Where are you from?" He's like, "From."
Yeah.
So I've lived in Knoxville for 25 years. Like, I'm from San Francisco.
Here.
Yeah, and it's just it's silly. That's a place where some education, some sensitivity training needs to happen.
Yeah,
too.
just because even people around here hear the Ohio in my parents from me.
Really?
They're like, "Where are you from?" "I'm from around Cedar Bluff." "How long have you lived here?" "My entire life." "Well, where are your parents from?" "Ohio." "Oh, okay." You don't sound like, West Knoxville has like more linguistic diversity, and I don't think we sound like, we sound Southern if you go anywhere else, but
pretty
people in Knoxville know.
Yeah, but fairly nondescript as far as the South goes.
Yeah.
You did live in Greenville, South Carolina for a little while, didn't you?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that because I lived in Greenville right after you lived there.
Did you?
Yeah, and my next door neighbor was like, "Hey, man, added you on Facebook. We got a mutual friend, Jennifer Ward."
Who was that?
Andrew Mansbach.
Oh, yeah.
Is his name. He was my next door neighbor when I was in film school.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
His brother wrote a funny book, or was it his cousin?
Yeah.
It's it's children's book, but it's really for adults.
Yeah.
It's called Go the Fuck to Sleep.
Oh, I have that book.
His cousin wrote that.
Oh,
My brother.
and You Have to Fucking Eat
Yep.
is also another book from
So
that.
good.
Yeah, they are so good. I've yet to read them to my children because I don't want to teach them how to drop the
no.
F-bomb. But I
Not
thought it was
yet.
funny. Yeah, not yet. They'll learn how to use it in
Oh
their
my
own
God.
time. But we did get that as like a joke from a
Yeah.
from a friend, and I don't know where they are. They're around here somewhere. They're up
Yeah.
high.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, up high.
What did your studies at Furman get you in, or what'd you study? You said food, or you said child stuff. What'd you say?
Well, that's what my PhD's in, child and
okay.
family studies. My master's is in public health, and my bachelor's from Furman is in psychology and women's studies.
So you've kind of gotten to use all of it.
Yeah.
Did you lean towards the women part when you were helping resettle families?
Yeah, I think I saw things a little bit differently. Could see how gender played a really big part in success in resettlement. Women tend to learn English faster because they're a little bit more employable in the U.S. It was easier just to get them jobs. I don't
Wait.
know why.
They learn English faster because they're incentivized, or they learn English faster because
They tend to
they're
be
smarter. We all know they're smarter.
I wasn't going to say that. But they end up getting employed faster and around English speakers more. They're dealing with, school just as not as a matter of biology, but because of
Right.
social and cultural context. And so power changes. And so we would see the power dynamics change. We would see, I was a director, and there were men that wouldn't speak to me directly.
So, who are these men?
They typically would be Middle Eastern men, or they'd be a little bit angrier
Okay.
when I was telling them,
So these are families that you're working with.
Yeah.
And the men wouldn't address you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say across the board, but there were a couple
Yeah,
that were
it
having a hard time. And that's okay. It was okay with me.
Yeah, it's
you know.
cultural.
Yeah, that's fine. I did not have a big thing about it. We just work how we need to work and, help them however we could. And it was really pretty limited. Resettlement is underfunded, like I said, and we were begging in the community to help bring furniture, get food, take people to appointments. They had a lot of appointments.
It's a grassroots effort.
Yeah, super grassroots. Yeah, that's where I learned. I cut my teeth in the nonprofit world and in management. I was the one. I have an admin team now. I have like 4 administrative assistants that are the absolute reason I get anything done.
Well, I bet you appreciate the hell out of that after
Oh yeah.
coming from bootstrapping it a little bit.
Yeah, definitely bootstrapping. Like I was the one kicking the printer to figure out how
Right.
to get it done because everyone else was out in the field. So I'm like, how do I put ink in the printer? Again, another skill, much like cooking, not in my big strengths.
Well, I'll tell you what. We can at Pop Fizz we can operate $100,000 cameras with ease. Put 5 of them out there if you want to. Work the most technologically advanced
Yeah.
cameras and things like that. We still can't get the printer to work.
No,
So don't feel bad about it.
printers just don't work.
No, they don't.
I just lived with a broken printer for the last month, and
Yeah.
then finally I went and begged one of the admins. I was like,
Just fix it.
do you know how to do the ink or where it is, or
What's it like to come from the bootstrap world and then finally have resources? I bet there's a sense of gratitude, no doubt, that helps you elevate your work and appreciate it more than somebody who didn't
for sure.
come from that.
Yeah, I think it's good to be a generalist. I think it's good to know how to cook a printer. I think it's good to have had those experiences. I think it's good that I worked in food service and retail, and things
Yeah.
like that. But I knew frontline casework was not my strength. And so there's no value difference for me in the different types of work. I'm just where I'm good. I'm just better at writing. I'm just better at thinking bigger and strategically. And then talking to Denise as the administrative coordinator, and she's the one closest to me. And then she's like, I'm going to make this make sense in terms of how to accomplish it or something, and I actually have the freedom instead of
being in the mud, doing all the
Yeah.
work, that you can actually think bigger picture
Yeah.
and strategize.
Yeah, and and actually think about it in ways that move us forward. Because when I was at Bridge, and I'm so grateful for that experience, and I'll never forget that or forget refugees or anything like that. In fact, one of my biggest initiatives right now with Snap Ed is to reach the refugee and immigrant audience, because we're not doing that. We're not doing that well. But I have the room, instead of spending 50% of my time managing my calendar, I have someone who's very detail oriented and focused and can do that, and then I can actually move us forward and create something that like communicates a vision to the team, and then gets us, distributes information, or I can read something that, changes the course or adapt a new curriculum or something like that, instead of, doing my appointments, because I get confused on Outlook. I just don't know how to push the buttons. I can tell you, and it's the same with stats. I love statistics. I love knowing why you would use a log regression or what a chi-square is. I can't push the buttons, Ben.
Really?
Can't figure it out. This is like, I'm like, oh, I've got to go again, look on Google, and it tells me the steps on how to push the button.
Well, if you don't do stuff all the time, you don't ever learn how to do it. You have to do stuff with repetition to commit it to memory.
Yeah. So I have to put my away message on my Outlook.
Yeah, that's a struggle for me.
I have to search every time how to do it.
Oh, yeah.
Why?
Because you do it once a year. That's it.
Yeah, I just do it. Yeah. So, anyways, I think that, yes, having an administrative staff that is skilled with the details and logistics and like maneuvering people, and it's super skilled work. It's just not my skill.
And it helps synergize, and it helps you guys be able to become, to use an overly cliche term, greater than a sum of your parts.
Yeah.
Right? Just get a little bit bigger than you were. And that's why, I think it's great for people to have to, air quotes, pay your dues.
Yeah.
Because it makes you appreciate it when you do have resources to do stuff. But sometimes you lose a lot of efficiency with Jennifer Ward having to Google how to put an away message out, every, couple weeks, because she's going out on the road or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's gotta be nice. And I know that I mean, just from what I've seen in the work that we have done together, like your strategy and your big picture stuff is on point. And it stings for me because I love working with you so much, but it's like we come up with these ideas together, we work on these concepts, and then and then we're out there carrying them out together, and I realize that you've got, I don't want to say bigger fish to fry, but you've got so many other things going on that are making just as big of a difference as the things that we're working on together. But your people that are working with you are super capable and almost extensions of you, and always feel really taken care of, and like we're really doing good work. We're really doing meaningful work too. But I always know that it's your kind of strategy too, and that to me brings it home a little bit, in that me and Jennifer are still working together here. It's not,
we are
working with somebody else. But we should talk about a little bit of the stuff that we've done together, because that's kind of that's how we kind of reconnected, is working on stuff for UTI Extension. And one of the cool ones, and I think I've talked about it on the podcast before, but the thing that we did with producer Sam Holla, it was the DJ Willy Wow thing.
Oh yeah.
What was that? So what was the whole concept that we were working on? Who were we trying to touch with that, and what were we trying to do?
Yeah, so a big part of what we do is going places where people are to deliver education or resources or interventions.
And so this is like your educators that you have as part of Extension that are traveling around the state of Tennessee.
They're usually within their county.
Within their county.
Yeah.
Okay. So these educators are going out to schools?
Schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're going places. COVID happened. They couldn't go anymore. They couldn't. And our traditional methods of delivery, which is what we say, is being in person. And we couldn't be in person anymore.
So they were the guests in your 4th grade class that would come in and teach you how to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah, those things we looked forward to when we were elementary.
Yeah, that fun
students.
lady. And that the teacher also looked forward to, because she got to sit down and get away from the goldfish crumbs or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's who we are. And so it was like, oh, wow, we have to figure out how to get online, how to get on Zoom, how to give, even if we can't do what we normally do, which is 8 lessons or 6 lessons on this, let's keep them aware of who we are, keep the relationship alive, give the kids something to watch and learn from safely, because teachers were teaching online and didn't have necessarily the content or there's a ton of content out there, but this is, if it's coming from UT, it's research and evidence-based. So we wanted, our program assistants came to us, and this is a value of mine, like listen to the people in the field, because I can have great ideas all day long, but it might not make any kind of sense actually in implementation. So
Right.
they came to us and said, we need videos to go with our stuff. Like we can't just send in worksheets, or we can't just, like some of them won't even let us Zoom. So we need something to send them.
Yeah, so you have these educators who are no longer able to go into the classroom because of the pandemic, but the
Yeah.
work they're doing is still important. It
Yeah.
needs to get out there. They've got to figure out a new way to do it.
Yeah, it's even more important. COVID, was hitting communities of color harder. Where we know that people in communities of color or trans youth or women and children are more likely to be affected by food insecurity. They're also more likely to be affected by COVID, and diet was related. So it felt like even more important. Like now
Right.
we know.
You were dealing with disproportionately impacted communities.
Yes, and families were losing jobs. We still have these crises going on. So they even have a smaller food budget. More people are going to be going on food stamps. Like we can't go away. We
Just
need
because
to
we
still
can't be
there.
in the classroom doesn't mean we can disappear for this time.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, we were like, let's make some videos. And so we can send them to teachers, and so we can still have a presence and give this great information in a really fun, high quality way.
Yeah, it's so hard though, because we're adults trying to get into the minds of in some cases 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. But that was so much fun for us because we got to come up with with these ideas that are outside of the box, because I think we all remember back to the cringy stuff that we had to sit through that was just either tone deaf or off the mark, or just we laughed at when we left or whatever. But I think we got to make some pretty cool stuff. The one that Sam wrote the music for was the wash your hands thing.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it was teaching kids how old, like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, like in that world, like that was where we
in the middle elementary. Yeah.
It's called Wash and Sanitize by DJ Willie Wow, and it's on YouTube and other places. But
That's good.
the way that all came down is you guys came to us with a problem, and it was, we can't get in the classroom. We have a limited amount of time to FaceTime with these kids. It's digital. We have to give them something that's going to be impactful in a short amount of time. And one of our guys at Pop Fizz, Brent Collier, was like, "Hey man, Sam Thomas works with this DJ down in Atlanta who throws these huge parties for the age group that you're talking about,
Yes.
DJ Willie Wow." And man, Sam, we talked to Sam. He was like, "Man, yes, we can do this. Let me write some music." So Sam comes up with this beat that's like Pink Floyd's Money, all the cash register noises and all that. He did that with a sink and a paper towel and a toilet flushing and all that, and made this beat and sent it to DJ Willie Wow down in Atlanta. And he wrote the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, wash your hands and sanitize. And man, when we saw the kids singing it and doing the dance, the right age range, the 4th, 5th, and 6th graders doing it, we were like, man, this is gonna hit. This is gonna be good.
Yeah.
And I think it did. I hope it did, because it was one of those moments where I felt like we were doing good for a good cause, which is you guys and the extension program. But we were also, you let us play. You let us get out there and do something super fun and outside the box. It's not a talking head teacher talking to a bunch of students. I think it hit. I think it did well. I don't know. What do you think?
I thought, I can still sing it. I
It's
won't.
still stuck in your
Another one
head.
of those skills. But
Kicking printers, cooking, singing.
Singing, all in the don't let Jen do that list. But it was so good. I thought it was super catchy. It wasn't like PhDs in their office, like trying to animate something, or, that's one
Right.
of the capacity things. Like, we
Yes.
had the capacity to go to you who can do this well and look good and be modern and, of the times, and then do something for us that's educational too. And my kids loved it.
Yeah, mine did too. They still sing it. We
Yeah.
turn it on sometimes.
And it was that 20 seconds, right? Like
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah,
whatever it's called.
so one of the and that's just another cool thing that you're talking about with, letting not having the educator figure out how to animate something to be a video. You let us play and let us have the creative, but we don't know the messaging that well. We need your help there. And so you guys had the point that, like, kids need to wash their hands for 20 seconds when they're in the bathroom, before they eat, whatever it is. And so we made the hook exactly 20 seconds so they could sing it while they were washing their hands.
Yeah.
And it was just a cool example of how collaboration creates synergy that can make a difference.
Yeah.
Too. And we couldn't have done that by ourselves, and you guys couldn't have done it by yourselves. So it was like, it's perfect.
Yeah,
It's exactly that's the way you draw it up.
It was perfect. And Ben, I think it was really personally perfect too. It was kind of like a full circle moment. I don't know if you remember this moment in high school when we had some surplus Ajax or whatever the dishwasher soap was.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I don't know
about
if you're into like admitting crimes on
that.
your podcast.
Oh yeah. Statute of limitations on the Gettysville Fountain. Yeah.
So it was like, we're making bubbles for this good thing.
Oh,
and
that's
maybe
funny.
when we were 17, we were making.
Yeah, that was how we that's how me and some of my friends like to raise hell as teenagers. That's a pretty, like, I don't know. I think it's a harmless crime to go put
For sure.
6 gallons of dish soap in the Gettysville Fountain and watch it overflow Westland Drive in the middle of the night and just sit back. And
I would call that a victimless crime.
I would call it a victimless crime.
Unless some poor soul had to clean out something. Then
I'm sure they did. Yeah, I feel bad
I'm
about
sorry for that.
that. No, that is funny though. I didn't think about that. Yeah, that is full circle.
It was full circle for us.
Yeah.
I don't know if I told anyone on the team that, but here we are.
Yeah. We stole a goat one time too.
Oh, I was not part of that.
No, you weren't part of
I
that.
need
Were
to
you
be
part?
on record.
Were you part of the? Were you part of the soap?
I was part of the soap. I was in
You
the
were?
car. I don't think I actually. So
Poured
I was
the soap?
I'm way too rule following, but I was like totally cheering you on and thought
Right.
it was
I
hilarious.
couldn't remember if you were there dumping it in or not.
I was there.
Yeah, we did. We took a goat one time from somebody's property, and we took it to the high school, and we took pictures with him. And
Like you do.
yeah, like you do. We were very gentle and kind with this goat.
Yeah.
I want PETA to come after us.
The goat was.
He was great. We were juniors in high school. We named the goat Junior. We spent about 4 hours with him. Took him to the high school. Took photographs with him. Took him home. Put him back in the fence again off Westland Avenue, Westland Drive.
Yeah.
Nobody was any the wiser. Didn't hear anything about it. But somebody still got the pictures. Again, a victimless crime. The goat was unharmed.
The goat probably had a great time.
If the goat could tell the story, I think he probably had
The
a
night
good
of his
time.
life.
The night of his life.
The night of his life. And that was before, thank goodness, social media. So we couldn't get in trouble for being, having underdeveloped brains and just posting immediately about our crimes online.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Are you worried about kids? Like, when you see kids growing up now, are you worried about the implications of them having these devices in their pockets that will invariably incriminate them maybe for the rest of their lives if they do something stupid?
For sure.
Do you educate your kids in that?
Yeah, I
way?
think that a big part of it is being, we're like geriatric millennials, I guess, technically.
Yeah,
or
we're pretty
whatever,
old
whatever.
for millennials.
Yeah, so we're like, we count. We had computers. I remember computer in kindergarten, but we're not natives really to like the digital world.
Natives. We're, what is it, immigrants? Digital immigrants?
Digital immigrants.
Yeah.
So we're learning, and I think it's a matter of teaching your kids how to deal with having a ton of information. I mean, you remember encyclopedias?
Yeah.
We had to go to a book back in my day.
Yeah.
I had to go look it up in a book. I didn't so I'm always talking to my kids like, said, I know this is true because I saw it online. Like, but how do you know? Because anyone can put anything online.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you know? And you have to learn to discern. And I mean,
Yeah, I
this
think
is a skill.
discernment is going to be the biggest superpower that people have
Yeah.
in
And
the next ever,
oh yeah.
with information being so free flowing.
And it's tough for people our age and older to discern. I mean, probably our kids are better at it. You know, I mean, we have people that are super vulnerable, and I think the pandemic is worse because of it. You know, people don't know how to get good information, how to read, you know, some pretty heady stuff sometimes. But, you know, I think a tool is, you know, my 7-year-old loves TikTok. He loves making TikToks. You know, me and himself or his dad likes it every time. You know, he's got 2 likes. A few of them have a few more likes or hearts or whatever. I
Yeah.
don't know. But he just made a TikTok. He's getting more advanced. And he made one where it looked like he was jumping up or down. It was a special effect. So my plan is to use that sometime when he sees a video that looks real. I'm going to say, do you remember how you made your video look like you were doing something you weren't?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that might be that. I don't know, but
Yeah.
it might be that.
Sure. And I've always, you always hear like, believe half of what you see and none of what you hear, or whatever it is. But that's becoming even more with deep fake stuff. Have you seen some of that? Face swap technology?
Oh, no.
Oh man, go look at Google Tom Cruise deep fake sometime and just look at the things that you see Tom Cruise saying, and then it's not him.
Yeah.
It's facial technology, motion tracking, all that stuff that is so like AI is so good at replicating information now and doing the math for you that you no longer have to, it's not Star Wars out here where you've got to do all that stuff. It's automated almost now.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff. Did you watch The Mandalorian?
No.
Did you watch that? There's a scene. I mean, there's a scene at the end of one of the seasons of The Mandalorian where Luke Skywalker comes back, and it looks just like him and it's like it's the same deep fake face swap technology that people are using like crazy, and that's going to be so weaponized. I mean, I saw something on Ellen where it was during the Obama administration, and it wasn't great, but like it was when Obama was giving, I think, his last State of the Union address, and after he gives it, you see him throw all his papers up in the air and like make it rain with his paper. And if you go back, like it's a fake setup with his face like barely holding on to what is moving around, and it looks fake. But like I bought it the first time I saw it.
Yeah.
And went and told somebody that I saw it,
Yeah.
And it's like stuff like that is making discernment so much harder because you have to know the tricks. You have to know how these people work that are trying to trick you, why they're trying to trick you. And like you said, the people older than us are probably the most susceptible, our parents' generation and all that.
Yeah. They haven't seen, we grew up and watched it get developed, and so we might have some inkling that these things are going on. But yeah, it can be really surprising. And I think, a lot of things just look outlandish, you might, but if you want to believe it's true, it's going to be a lot harder.
Exactly. Yeah. If you've already got some implicit bias, then you're going to believe it a lot more than a skeptic will.
Yeah.
Especially if it hammers home your point.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's really hard to be open to things that disprove something that you already believe is true. And yeah, I see that a lot. That's why I love my psychology degree. I use it in management, and I use it in understanding and making asks. For a while I was fighting for higher minimum wage for our people at the county level, and we were doing all these strategic negotiations. I know I'm moving a little bit, but they said, well, let's tell the directors, we can do a 3%, a 5%, and 8%. Well, maybe we'll just give them the 3% and 5%. I said, no. We want the 5%. So we're going to give them the 8 and say we want the 8, and they're going to go down to 5, and we're going to be happy, you know? And that's called the, door in the face effect. Like, it's an actual psychological phenomena. But I learned that in undergrad at Furman.
Right.
And so, like, these cognitive biases, like cognitive dissonance and confirmation bias and stuff like that, that's totally at play here. Just want people to, and my kids to learn, like, just think about it a little bit more. Like challenge yourself. Like could this not be right? And then
Yeah.
go from there.
I wonder, I worry about it because your kids are a little older than mine. Your kids are already on TikTok and doing all that. I wonder how much different. I'm scared to death, honestly. If I'm going to be honest, that like I'm 30 years older than my kids. Like I'm way disconnected with where they're going to be, the way that they're uptaking information, the way that they're seeing it, their perspective, and it's daunting.
Yeah.
And I don't really know that. I mean, not to be the old guy, but like already feel that way.
Yeah.
My kids are not where your kids are yet, or
Yeah.
in the digital space. But it's scary, it's daunting, and you can only think that it could be dangerous.
Yeah.
If not dealt with.
It's super scary. I think that they're always going to figure something out. They're going to figure out something around us. Like there's going to be an app that looks like a clock and it's really something else. So it's not, there's research about this, and this isn't my area of expertise, but what I've read is that, it's not just about monitoring what they do, which we do. We monitor. Mm-hmm. We set internet time limits. We, have the parental controls and all that stuff, but it's having them figure out what is inappropriate. What do you click off of? What has, like, how do you navigate this world? Because I'm not always going to be there. And that's, kind of basic psychology too. Like spanking, it's about 40 years of research. Doesn't work.
Really?
It works in the very short term. They might stop what they're doing, but they don't necessarily know why. They learn more about avoiding the spanker. They learn about how to get around it and things like that. But if so I don't know. I guess there's just always a way. There's always a way around. So you have to learn how to deal with this.
Yeah, kids are crafty.
Yeah.
Right? Their brains are crafty. They're going to figure out how to get around the alarm system so they can sneak out of the house when they're 12 years old or or whatever. Like and I'm wondering about that too. How are they going to get around? How are they going to figure out a way to hack the internet password when I change it so they can't get online because they're grounded or whatever?
Yeah, they can do that. And they're, we joke about millennials like converting PDFs for our older, colleagues, but what are our kids going to be helping us with? Like, what is even going to be the thing?
I've thought about this a lot, and it's why I try to stay on top of cryptocurrency, NFTs, like.
I just learned about that 2 days ago. I mean, I still don't get it, but.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, I understand it more than most people, I think, but there's a lot to it, and it's painful to understand that kind of stuff, to contort your brain in ways where it can understand these things that have no basis in your brain of being real things, and it's like it's almost it's a grudge. Like I begrudgingly keep up with this kind of stuff, not because I'm interested in it, but because I know my kids are going to know more about it than I am in no time. So I better keep up.
Yeah. I remember my uncle years ago, probably over a decade, asked me, he's like, so I have a picture on my computer and then it's like, 3.2 whatever megabytes or something. And then I reduce it to 1.7. Like, where do the other megabytes go? I was like,
that's a good question. Yeah.
It's not a thing, but it was a thing.
Yeah.
But why, what?
Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
I had no answer.
Yeah. So he was sending it probably. Sending it to somebody.
But like, what is space when it's digital? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
What it is.
Bits and bytes, man.
Bits and bytes. What is that?
Yeah.
I can't do my away signature. I'm not going to understand that.
Well, you're going to have to get on it because our kids are going to outrun us in no time.
Yeah.
And we're going to be the old people sitting at home.
Yeah.
Being totally disconnected.
Yeah.
If we're not careful.
Yeah. We got to be careful. It's the same principle. Like, instead of from the outside in telling them, like, get off that thing, it's not safe. Like, do you feel safe? Are you sturdy? Do you think falling from there would feel good.
Right. Same deal.
Think about it
Yeah.
yourself and then make a choice.
Yeah.
And if you make the wrong one, I'm probably going to correct you right now because I don't feel like going to the ER tonight.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah.
But, in this, you send the wrong picture to somebody as a high school student, it can ruin your life.
Yeah, the laws haven't caught up.
Mm-mm.
It's child pornography.
Yeah. Go send around a picture that your girlfriend sent you. Go show it to other people, and you've just trafficked child pornography.
Yep.
Yeah. And I don't know that the laws should. I mean, like that's, kids shouldn't. I don't know. Kids shouldn't be. The stakes should be lower for kids, but we have to educate them, and we have to let them know that things. I don't know. These things have real consequences, but we barely know what they are ourselves because we didn't have to deal with them till now. We didn't have to deal with them till we knew better.
Right. There's no Getty Zoo Ajax picture on Facebook. Thank goodness.
No.
I want to know who has the pictures. Maybe Junior's floating around.
Junior's.
We probably
Junior's
didn't take pictures of soapy night.
We didn't have that technology
That
yet.
was like the one bad thing I did, and it was with
I know.
you then.
I'm so glad you remember it. I'm so glad I
course
could be a monument of your rebellion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was so sad I couldn't be at the DJ Willie Wow set. I came by later and saw the suds and was like, oh.
I was literally cleaning up all the soap when you came back.
Yeah.
I was taking down the foam machine.
Maybe that was payback for whoever had to clean the
It's exactly
fancy fountain.
It was penance.
It was penance. I'm glad. Thank you for doing that for the both of us. We'll count it for the both of us.
Yes. Well, what else we got? We miss anything? We've been going on an hour. We miss anything? Leave anything out you want to talk about?
I don't know. I talked about kids and the refugee stuff, and teaching is a big part. Like,
So
I've read 76 books this year.
how do you do that? How do you find time? Do you listen to them or do you read them?
I do both.
Okay.
I really love learning. I love being an alt-ac, so alternative academia. So I'm not like a traditional professor.
Right. You said that surprised me when you said that you were an adjunct at UT, because I would have figured you would have just been a faculty member at the university, but I guess the extension is different.
Yeah, extension's different. We do have faculty. They don't have teaching and research appointments in our department.
Gotcha.
And so it's all programmatic. It's all, pulling in research essentially that other people do and condensing it and making it usable for the public. That's what our faculty does. And we have 2 nutrition faculty that help us with our content. But I'm an adjunct with child and family studies, and I teach diversity of children and families. So I talk about how race, class, and gender and other axes of diversity like ability intersect to create different experiences and outcomes for families. And it's a really, really important part of what I do. And so those 76 books I read, a lot of them have to do with race or class or gender and power and food and things like that.
Who are your students?
So in child and family studies, there's a track for early childhood educators. So a lot of them are going to be pre-K through 3 licensure teachers, and they're considered pre-service. They're not teachers yet. And then we have a lot of students that take it as an elective. So we have a lot of speech pathology, have a lot of I'm trying to think, like nursing students, things like that. And so my goal really, and from my perspective, is it's like I love applying research. I love applying the knowledge that the academy creates. So in my class, I have them think intentionally about how every week they're writing about how they're going to apply this in their life. And that's why I would always have nurses or different student groups at Bridge in Refugee Resettlement. So it's like, how are you going to deal with this family when they come to your office? One of my first experiences as a case manager at Bridge was calling a doctor's office and saying, I'm going to need an interpreter. And the person on the other line, or on the other, end of the line, and this was a landline, speaking of technology, said, oh, what, do they speak Mexican? And I just was like stunned.
We have a major disconnect here.
First of all, that's not a language. Yeah. Second of all, no. There's a lot of other people in the world, and there's a lot of other people in Knoxville, and this Burundian family actually needs a Kirundi interpreter, and if you don't have that, Swahili works too. these are multilingual people. They're going to be able to get around in a few different languages, but English not right now.
Yeah.
And so I was just always having like, you're going to interface as a teacher, as a nurse, as a speech pathologist with people who are different from you, who've come from another culture, who speak a different language, who have a different sexual orientation, who have a disability, or some kind of accommodation is needed. Like, you have to be able to interface and interact and serve people who aren't like you. And so think about that. And what does this mean for their experience? We had a lot of Burundian kids who grew up in refugee camps that were having a hard time in school because they had my kids have a hard time sitting still for that long. Like, it's just not right. I don't think to have kids sit still that long, but especially for them, it was incongruent with their culture,
Right.
and their experiences. So instead of
And they felt uncomfortable in a lot of other different ways too,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
So having like a little bit of patience for that and a little bit of grace and coming at it in a different way and talking to the parents and engaging an interpreter, little things like that can make a huge difference for a family, and just learning how to navigate the world. And so that refugee lens was a big one, but in my class we talk about a lot of different things too. We talk about the generational wealth gaps.
What's that?
We talk about like how different policies impact communities of color. So the GI Bill was huge in terms of making housing affordable for a lot of people and really building the middle class. That happened predominantly for white people.
Right. That served.
Yeah. Black men and their families were denied loans. There
Even though
was,
they had served in the military?
yeah, there was
Really?
redlining. And so without having the ability to purchase homes back then meant not developing an asset that would then be passed on. And so we have these huge, huge wealth inequalities right now that we're seeing. So when people...
They have generational implications, although they happened a while ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
So the average, white family might have a net worth of like $80,000 to $100,000. The average black family, 3 to 4
1,000?
to 1,000. Yeah, huge differences.
Yeah, that's a huge disparity.
on the population level. That doesn't mean everybody, obviously. It doesn't
Right.
mean, but
you average it all out. That's where it
Yeah.
lands.
and so you see that segregation in Knoxville right now. I mean, there are neighborhoods that are predominantly black, are predominantly communities of color, and then you have predominantly white neighborhoods. I mean, these are a result of policies that happened a long time ago. And why is that? And what does that mean? And what does that mean for the educational opportunities? What does that mean for a future career? What does that mean for all those things? And it's not to say that there aren't ways to get around that or to beat that, but it just means
It's
it
just
takes
harder.
a whole of a lot more effort,
Yeah. Yeah.
And-
It's amazing that I like to think that we live in this super enlightened part of the world and all that. But I go to Atlanta or something like that, or a city like Atlanta, or a city like Memphis, maybe a little less so. But like here, it's still very much, there's a black neighborhood here, there's a Hispanic neighborhood right next to it, and there's another black neighborhood on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And all the white people live in West Knoxville.
Yeah.
And it makes it, I feel guilty a little bit because of it. Just because I'm white, maybe. But also it makes me wonder, how did we get here and why?
Yeah.
And what does it mean going forward? How do we fix it? Because it really makes me sad, because I feel like it should not be that way.
Yeah.
But it has been that way for a long time. When I lived in Park Ridge, there were they were going through this H1, the historic overlay, which mandates what you can and can't do to your house, or your house has to be in a certain, it has to be in a if you're going to repair your house, it has to be, according to the code.
Right.
And it came across as this big like gentrification effort that ultimately I don't think landed. But what it did for me was it made me realize that 3 generations of family have lived in this house. This house has been paid off, for 60 or 70 years, and this family has continued to live in this house, and they have gotten by however they've had to get by, but they certainly haven't thrived financially. And now you're telling them that if they redo their front porch steps, it has to be 3/4 inch pine, and it has to it has to meet these code requirements. And that it made me realize that going into these I think more than anything, it made me realize that people have lived certain ways, especially in impoverished areas, for generations, and they've been fine. They made it through. To your point about people being resilient, but that's not like they should have an opportunity to also to thrive.
Yeah.
And I think just a little bit of educating people on that is probably very helpful. It sounds like, because it sounds like your course that you teach, it sounds like to me that it's a big course in perspective, more than anything. And I don't have it and didn't have it until I had that experience, where I realized I was the outlier. And there's been generations of people that have been getting by just fine before me, but they weren't able to grow or buy a house in Getty's View.
Yeah, get ahead. Yeah.
To get ahead. But it does sound like, is that right? Like your course is gaining perspective across not just race, class, but also ability, and just letting you know that not everybody's middle class and white.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting you say that, because a lot of the students happen to be white, and a lot of them are women, and they do a really good job talking about race, I think. But when we start talking about class, it's harder. And because they kind of know what to say when it comes to race, they know how to not be offensive in a classroom. But you can't tell in the classroom who grew up poor or who grew up some kind of way. So they'll end up saying things, and it gets a little bit dicier.
Really?
But you said, how do you fix it? And I think a lot of my reading has to do with like knowing where it comes from, figuring it out, listening to perspectives, like read black women, do it. Like read what they write and read all of it. There's so many women, black women, writing amazing things. And listen to them. And so, like, what are their experiences? Where are these things coming from? Read the research. The Color of Law is a really great place to like learn about segregation. Super dense and kind of dry, but so figuring that out. And then also, how do you translate that? Like, what do you do? Because the students are saying, well, I'm not racist. You're part of a racist society. Racism doesn't mean you're a bad person doing mean things to people that look different from you. Of course, you're not doing that. Some people are. Some people are pretty terrible. But that's not how it operates right now. It operates in a very clandestine way right now. It happens through these policies that look neutral, that look race neutral, but they're not, because they end up, cutting out a class of people, or language, like surveys, not having a non-binary option, not having a place for yourself, the way we categorize race and ethnicity on forms, and so I say, wherever you are and whatever power you have, use that. Think about things with this lens, this race, class, gender, ability lens, and make decisions intentionally to disrupt the system and disrupt the power here. So I'm a white woman in charge of $6 million at the University of Tennessee. I have some power in the programs that I have. So I hire, I have a strategic goal to reach, refugee and immigrant families. I'm going to be translating first into the languages of the people that need it the most. I was fighting to pay people more. I'm not trying to save money. I'm not trying to save money in my salary line item. I want to pay people more, and I want to pay people more who are bilingual. We don't do that right now. I want to look at our hiring process. It's really hard to get a job at UT. It's a difficult system. Someone that doesn't speak English as a first language might have a little bit more difficulty with the nuances of the system, even if they have really advanced English. There's things like that you, like when you do some perspective taking, And when you understand where some of these things come from, you can say, hey, that might actually not work. Or even in meetings, I mean, thinking about gender and power, like if we're in a mixed gender meeting and I notice that a woman isn't speaking up or had kind of an idea, but, you know, someone's interrupting and it's usually a man, you know, I'd say like, hey, Kelsey, what was your idea? Like, what was that?
Yeah.
Like, use what power you have.
To give a voice.
Mm-hmm. To open it up for them. Pay people more. Pay people more. Read Black women. Cite Black women. They know. Follow them. You know, and, you know, put people where they can have influence. Right now I have a decision on who's going to be on the hiring committee, me or a woman of color, and I'm going to choose her.
It's putting your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. I stopped a hire because this woman was saying some things, and I knew
that were red flags.
Super red flags, but they were subtle.
Yeah.
And I was in a group, and I know how groups work because of a psychology degree, and you know, someone just has to break the ice, and then it can all kind of fall down. And a woman of color came to me later and was like, "I'm so glad you said that."
Really?
I'm so glad you said that. She would have been. Thank you for doing that.
She wasn't going to say anything about it.
And it was my job because, you know, her in this room had a different power, you know, and I had it. And so I was like, absolutely not. I'm not sending that woman into classrooms where she's going to offend a big group of people. I don't care if she speaks Spanish or not. And that wasn't her first language.
Right.
She learned it, and I'm glad she learned it. It's really great for her. But she also, the first thing she said was like, I don't have any tattoos or anything. And I was like, oh boy, you're on a Zoom interview. I'm sure like half the people here have tattoos.
Sure. And that's not like a bad thing anymore.
No, it's not a bad thing. I'm like, okay, well.
I'm like, I was amazed with your work that I knew that you did before we sat down and talked today, but like I'm even more so now. And it's really great to talk to you because I love talking to people who make me feel dumb. And you just you know so much about you just have such great perspective on society and how polyfacing it is, and it's not just, you know, one straight road with a couple little turns on it. It's a lot bigger than that.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate you providing that perspective to me, and I hope everybody gets what I got from it, because it's important. My mind's a little blown right now.
Well, I'm so flattered. Sometimes, you know, I'm not the most fun at parties. Like the professor's here and she's talking about racism again, but I'm happy you're excited about it.
You're a good follow on Instagram too.
Yeah.
I got to tell you that.
Am I?
Oh yeah. Yes. Make you think, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just little thinkers and a lot of cute kids.
Yeah.
Pictures.
Thanks for coming and thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Thank
and
you.
I'm very glad to see you.
Likewise. I love hanging out with you, Ben.
Yeah, me too. Take care, and we'll see you real soon. Who knows? We may do it again.
Awesome.
Be good.